Okay, I'm making another video. The commander of this one is Yasova Dragonclaw, a 4/2 commander that's essentially a teamer colors, costs 3 to bring in, has trample, and at the beginning of combat on my turn I may pay 1 is it, and if I do, I can control a target creature an opponent controls with power less than Yasova Dragonclaw's power until end of turn. I untap that creature and it gains haste until end of turn. Now, the lands are pretty simple. I have 8 non-basic lands that are mostly for mana fixing and giving me options for colors, and a couple of fetch lands. And the rest of them are 31 basics. Mainly forests, because that's a driving color in the deck. Least amount is, I believe, the mountains. Let's double check that. Yeah, mountains are least, and islands are holding a pretty solid second place here. Not too many duplicates, 3 full arts, 3 snow mountains. So, altogether, there's a total of 39 lands. And then here's Mana Acceleration by way of Mana Rocks Signets, Mana Rocks Diamonds, and Mana Dorks. Lotus Cobra does a lot of work in this deck, actually. And now these are my searching for land cards. Yeah, most of them let me search for any basic land type. Wood Elves is only for forests. And Harvest Season, I'm actually thinking about taking it out of here because it doesn't do as much work as you would think it would do. Well, you'll kind of see as I progress through explaining the deck. Okay. You know, Kodama's Reach, of course. And Mycosynth Wellspring, I could probably replace it with something better. Oh, but I like this one. Traverse the Ulvenwald. It's just searching for a basic land card and I reveal and put in my hand, and then I shuffle my library. But if I play at a time where I have Delirium, I can search for a land card or a creature card and put that into my hand. It can be helpful out mid to late game. These are transitional cards between Mana Acceleration. You remember this card, of course. Solemn Simulacrum and Rites of Flourishing. And also helps me out with some card draw. Now, Teamer Ascendancy gives my creatures haste and has an ETB for creatures with power 4 or greater that allows me to draw a card. Should start by mentioning that all of this is my draw package. Now, Niv-Mizzet the Firemind, you know what it does. It's predominantly a pinger for every time you draw a card and allows me to tap it to draw a card. Now, Oran Viper barely made the cut here, but it has this pseudo death touch type of scenario. And also, when it deals damage to a player, I get to draw a card. Now, Dragon Mage has been reprinted a lot of times, but basically it deals damage to a player, everybody discards their hand and draws 7 cards. Creature comes into play, that's not a token, draw a card. Jace's Archivist. Everybody discards, and the most cards discarded this way is what everybody draws. Guardian Project, every creature's a singleton in this deck, so obviously every creature I play draws me a card. Ancestral Visions. Now this one's an old card. This isn't really draw, but it gets cards into my hand. I reveal my entire library, and an opponent chooses the land card, a non-creature card, and a non-land non-creature card. Wait, did I say that right? Well, anyways, I get 3 cards of my opponent's choosing, but pretty much everything in here is gas. And they can't give me like 3 lands either, so none of that. And then Visions of Beyond. During a late game, this is Ancestral Recall, pretty much. Rishkar's expertise, you know this one. You know why it's good. And most of the creatures in here, or at least most of the powerhouses, are power 4 or greater, so a decent amount of life gain with this card. And then, focus, Tatyova, it helps me out. It's pseudo life gain and card draw. Over here, a one-time life gain and gives me a creature token when it dies, and every creature that comes into play gives me life to help me last through the long game. This is my +1/+1 counters package in the deck. Seen before, a decent number of the creatures in this deck are elves, and even if this is by itself, it's still +1/+1 counter every time I tap it. And this one over here, Champion of Lumbold, it basically, eventually, makes my creatures unblockable. You've seen Master Biomancer before. The stronger it gets, the stronger the rest of my creatures get when I put them into play. And Vigor, hoo-hoo. Now imagine that combo right there. I just keep using Biomancer as a blocker, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. Of course, just an alt-win condition that deals with +1/+1 counters. We've talked about it before. Now, this deck doesn't have a lot of destruction. Terastrodon, 3 non-creature permanents I can destroy of my choosing. Tap 4 and tap creatures, destroy target artifact or enchantment. And I know this is not actually destruction, but it's removing 2 lands from the game. That can be as close to destruction as you can get. And then, of course, Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre. That Annihilator ability really slows them down. Plus, even if they counter it, just by casting it, I get to destroy at least one thing. Alright, and these are just some big creatures that have different abilities. This one's unblockable and has Suspend, so I can play it early on, only for it to come out later and suddenly possibly give out the killing blow. This one, as you've noticed, a lot of the creatures are pretty big, and whenever a creature with power 5 or greater comes into play, I return a creature card from my graveyard to my hand, so I won't really be afraid of losing creatures too much. And this one, you saw the amount of mana acceleration I have, searching and putting onto the field. This will be pretty easy to have happen. And also, that means that every time I get a 5/5 dragon, I get to return a creature card from my graveyard. Then over here, World Spine Worm. The biggest single creature that's legal as far as I know. And when it dies, damn, 3 5/5s, which also trigger this one. So, when it dies, it produces tokens that trigger the ability so that I can grab it from the graveyard so I can play it again next turn. Murkfiend Liege, it's a lord and it untaps all my creatures. Then over here, it allows me to untap all my creatures during each other's untap step. And at the end of each of my turns, I untap all lands I control, ensuring that I'm pretty much never without mana at any time. Then Craterhoof Behemoth, you know what it does. It's a win more card in this particular case. And this one is more of another win more card. It allows me to get creature tokens every time I play a card, depending on how many times I win a flip of a coin. Joyer of the Gittu. It gives everything Suspend 4. So, early game, if I have a really expensive card, I can go ahead and suspend it and get it out before I would have to pay for it. Plus, when it comes out, I'll have free mana to spend on other expensive creatures. Now, this one's an interesting one. It's whenever I'm searching my library, I can play it from the deck. Think about that for a second. All those land searches, all the mana acceleration. I'm searching for land, surprise! 9/5 Trampler. And the final card, Time Sifter. Lots of text, but basically it means the person who gets the next turn is determined at every upkeep, in which everybody removes the top card of their deck, and whoever has the highest converted mana cost gets the next turn. If it's played right, I could get multiple turns in a row. Adds a lot of chaos. So anyways, that's my deck, D.A.R, Deadly and Raging. Also spells out the name of the character from the Beastmaster movie and TV series. Gee, I wonder why I could have named it that. So what do you think? Opinions? Thoughts?